Hello Muslim friends in the world. João Paulo was born in a small village in Brazil, in the state of Minas Gerais. He grew up in a humble family who worked daily in coffee fields. Although his family did not possess much wealth, they were rich in faith. His mother often took young João to church every Sunday, and it was there that his love for God began to grow. At the age of 18, João felt a strong calling from God in his heart to serve others. However, life was not easy. He lost his father in a work accident, and João had to work hard to support his family. For years, he worked as a laborer on coffee plantations, but he never wavered in his faith in God. At 25, João began studying theology at a local seminary. He studied diligently, balancing his time between work and education. During this period, João actively served in a small church in his village. He spent long nights talking to young people who had lost their way, helping struggling farmers, and visiting the sick at the local hospital. After graduating, João was appointed pastor of a small church in Rio de Janeiro. In the big city, João faced new challenges: crime, poverty, and deep-rooted social injustice. But João did not back down. He initiated social programs to help street children, opened a soup kitchen for the homeless, and even established a small school in the church basement to provide free education for underprivileged children. João's sincerity in serving others attracted many people. Yet, he remained humble. "This is not about me," he once said during a sermon. "This is about God's love that we must share with the world." One quiet afternoon, João was cleaning the church attic, a space that had been untouched for years. Amid the dust and old belongings, he discovered an old wooden box that was locked. After some effort to open it, João found a worn manuscript inside, which appeared to be an original version of one of the Gospels. The manuscript was written in an ancient language and accompanied by notes penned with careful attention. Curious, João began studying the manuscript. Fortunately, he had some foundational knowledge of ancient languages from his seminary education. He started translating the text and found that its contents differed from what he had always known and taught. João discovered statements in the manuscript that seemed inconsistent with modern Christian teachings. As he delved deeper into his research, João began comparing the manuscript's content with the Quran, the holy book of Islam, which he had heard about from an acquaintance. João realized there were many similarities in moral and spiritual teachings, but he also found that the Quran provided a more logical and comprehensive explanation of the one true God. In his search for the truth, João began to deeply study Islam. He read the Quran in its entirety, studied the hadiths, and engaged in discussions with a local scholar in the city. Every question he asked was met with logical reasoning and strong evidence. João began to feel a sense of peace he had never experienced before. Following the discovery of the ancient manuscript, João Paulo, the former pastor from Brazil, felt his life had changed forever. He not only found Islam to be the religion that answered all his questions but also realized that he had been teaching something that, in his view, was not entirely true. João grew restless every time he stood at the pulpit to preach to his congregation. Words that once flowed smoothly now felt heavy. He could no longer deliver messages he didn't truly believe in. His heart was troubled, but he also knew that announcing his decision to the congregation would come with great consequences. After weeks of inner conflict, João finally decided to be open with his congregation. One Sunday morning, with the church full of attendees eager to hear his sermon, João stood at the pulpit with a racing heart. He began by saying, "My dear brothers and sisters, for years I have stood here, teaching you about God and His love. But today, I want to share a journey that has led me to a greater truth." João shared the story of discovering the ancient manuscript, how he compared it with the Quran, and how he ultimately found Islam to be the religion that brought true peace into his life. "I do not intend to hurt your hearts, but I can no longer remain silent. I have found Islam to be the pure and true religion, a faith that teaches us to worship the one true God without intermediaries. I can no longer stand here and teach something I no longer believe in. I invite all of you to seek the truth as I have found it." The room fell silent. The congregation was shocked, and some appeared visibly upset. A few left the church in tears, feeling betrayed by their spiritual leader. However, others stayed, listening attentively, intrigued by João's courage and the story of his journey. That day, João knew he had lost many things: his position as a pastor, the support of most of his congregation, and even some of his closest friends. Yet, he felt free. The burden that had weighed on his heart was finally lifted. After his announcement, João Paulo decided to leave the church entirely and dedicate his life to Islam. He adopted his new name, Abdul Jabar, and began spreading the message of Islam in a peaceful manner, explaining the religion to anyone willing to listen. He connected with the Muslim community in Brazil, and through his lectures and writings, he became a strong voice in sharing the teachings of Islam in his homeland. Despite facing various challenges, including threats and criticism, Abdul Jabar remained steadfast. He believed that the truth he had discovered was worth every struggle. Some members of his former church even reached out to him, curious about his spiritual journey. After engaging in discussions and learning more, some of them also decided to embrace Islam. "The truth is often difficult to accept," said Abdul Jabar in one of his lectures. "But only through the truth can we find true peace." He is now remembered as a courageous figure, someone who was willing to leave the comfort of his previous life to follow the path he believed to be the truth. Abdul Jabar taught that the search for truth is a duty of every human being and that God's guidance will come to those who seek it with a sincere heart. After João Paulo, now known as Abdul Jabar, declared his faith in Islam, several members of his former congregation also decided to embrace Islam after hearing his story and studying the religion. However, Abdul Jabar reminded them of the importance of maintaining peace and respecting the rights of others. He told them, "Islam is a religion of peace and respect. We must not force our beliefs on others or harm their places of worship. If we wish to invite others to the truth, we must do so with love, not violence." Instead of destroying the church, Abdul Jabar and the newly formed Muslim community decided to build their own mosque on an empty piece of land they purchased. They worked together, raised funds, and constructed a modest place of worship that became a symbol of peace and unity in the city.